In December 2011, a young Australian backpacker named Erin Langworthy stepped off a bridge above one of the most dangerous rivers in the world. She was 22 years old, traveling through Africa and taking part in what was supposed to be a routine bungee jump over the Zambezi River. The Zambezi is a force of its own. It's fast-moving, violent, and home to crocodiles, hippos, and deadly currents. Erin had no way of knowing that her jump would be anything but routine. What followed was a violent plunge into one of Africa's most treacherous rivers and a survival story that stunned the world. This is a true story of the Victoria Falls bungee jump disaster. Victoria Falls isn't just a waterfall, it's a force of nature. It sits on the Zambezi River, the fourth longest river in Africa, which winds more than 2,500 kilometers, or about 1,500 miles, through 6 countries. The river takes a dramatic dive off a basalt cliff, forming what's widely recognized as the largest continuous curtain of falling water on Earth. It's not the tallest, not the widest, but when you combine sheer height with immense width, nothing else on the planet compares. Locally, it's known as the smoke that thunders, and the name fits. Victoria Falls is more than twice the height of Niagara Falls, and during peak flood season, it stretches over a mile wide. The spray shoots so high in the air it creates its own weather system. On some days, it seems like the sky itself is raining upwards. The mist can be seen from miles away. The falls sits directly on the border between Zambia and Zimbabwe, and for decades they've drawn travelers from around the world. Many of them chasing the thrill of whitewater rafting through the gorge, ziplining across the canyon, and even the infamous Devil's Pool, where swimmers can lie belly down at the very edge of the falls with nothing but a slick, slippery rock between them and a massive drop. And then there's bungee jumping. The Victoria Falls Bridge is a steel arch structure built in 1905, and it stretches across the gorge just downstream from the falls. And it's become one of the most iconic bungee jump locations in the world. Thousands of people have jumped from it, backpackers, bucket listers, all of them trusting that that bungee cord will hold. But beneath the surface, quite literally, there's more than that to worry about. The Zambezi River is ferocious. It's home to Class 5 rapids, powerful enough to flip commercial rafts in seconds. There's hidden whirlpools, submerged boulders, and unpredictable surges in current. And then there's the wildlife. Crocodiles patrol the shoreline, and you usually can't see them until it's too late. Hippos, even more aggressive, are responsible for more human deaths in Africa than lions, elephants, or rhinos combined. They've been known to charge boats, tip kayaks, and attack swimmers without warning. Many people have died in this river. Even just rafting the Zambezi with a helmet, life jacket, and a trained guide is considered one of the most extreme adventures on the continent. When a bungee jump goes right, it's over in seconds. But if anything goes wrong, it's not just a fall. It's a direct drop into one of the deadliest rivers on Earth. Erin Langworthy was a 22-year-old student and halfway through a solo backpacking trip across Africa. She'd taken some time off from university to chase adventure. She wanted to experience wildlife, waterfalls, adrenaline, and maybe a few sketchy bus rides along the way. And that's where she joined up with a tour group, heading to Victoria Falls. They were going to be rafting, ziplining, and for those brave enough, bungee jumping over the Zambezi River. And Erin was in. It was her first ever bungee jump, but the idea didn't scare her. If anything, she was actually excited. She said, "I'd heard it was incredible, jumping from a bridge 111 meters above a gorge with the thundering falls behind you." The day before the jump, she mailed a postcard to her mother back home in Perth, and she said, "I'm doing a bungee jump tomorrow, so I'll say goodbye, ... Only joking." At the time, it was meant to be funny, but those words almost came true. This jump is considered one of the most famous bungee jumps in the world. Every year, thousands of people line up to leap from the steel arch, trusting that the equipment will hold and that they'll bounce back safely and into the air like everyone else before them. Erin's group went one by one. Some were screaming, some were laughing, but each person was pulled back up, smiling and buzzing with adrenaline. And then it was Erin's turn. She was the last in the group to go. The staff wrapped blankets around her ankles and then the bungee cord over top. They clipped on the safety gear and walked her to the edge. Everything looked secure. Erin was nervous, but not scared. And she had no reason to be. More than 100 people had jumped that day already, and she was number 105. Standing on the edge of the platform, she glanced down at the river far below and the open air between her and the Zambezi River. The view was stunning. The gorge stretched out in both directions, wrapped in this mist and late afternoon light. It was just beautiful, but still something kind of gnawed at her. She looked down at her feet, bound together at the ankles, and voiced her one concern, saying, "What if my feet slip out?" And a staff member standing nearby said casually, "That's the last thing that would ever happen." It didn't help her feel much better. And right before the jump, a thought flickered through her head, and it was, what am I doing throwing myself off a perfectly good bridge? But she was caught up in the moment, in the crowd, and the energy, the thrill was there. This was the kind of adventure that she'd come all this way for. So the countdown began. 3, 2, 1, and then she jumped. Arms outstretched, air rushing past her, the sound of the gorge echoing around her. It was everything she'd hoped for. For a moment, it was perfect. She said that rush was amazing, that she could see why people love doing it. But then something went wrong. So a quick word about bungee cords before we go further. So here's how a bungee jump works. It's pretty obvious. The cord is made of these multiple strands of elastic rubber wrapped in this protective sheath. It's designed to stretch, slow you down, and recoil, rebounding the jumper safely before they get anywhere near the ground or water or whatever's below. Jumping crocodiles, hippos. The key, though, is calibration. The cord stretch must be matched precisely to the jumper's weight and the height of the platform. Too short and the rebound is too sharp. Too long and there's a risk of bottoming out. And most operators have a system. They weigh each person carefully just before the jump and then select a cord from a set with different load ratings. Some companies use a more versatile cord and instead adjust the anchor position, letting out more or less rope based on the jumper. But if an operator is not weighing jumpers, or worse, using the same cord for everyone, that's not just lazy, it's dangerous. In Erin's case, she jumped with the same cord that had been used over 100 times already that day, and at 5:30 p.m., it failed. Her jump began like everyone else's. She fell, the cord stretched, and then it snapped her back up in a smooth recoil. But on the rebound, the cord broke. It didn't fray, it didn't slowly unravel, it snapped clean in midair. One moment she was soaring upward, and the next she was free falling with nothing to slow her down. She plunged 40 meters, or about 131 feet, right into the Zambezi River. From the platform, it took a few seconds for people to understand what just happened. There was no scream, there was no bounce, only silence and the limp broken end of the cord swaying in the wind. Her group stopped cheering and more like started screaming. Staff rushed to the edge of the water, scanning it for her. Erin later described the sensation as feeling a jolt across her chest, and it seemed as if she slowed down for a second and then sped up. And then she could hear the wind rushing past her ears. And she hit the water hard. It's a kind of impact that can shatter bones, knock you unconscious, or worse. She was dazed and disoriented, but still conscious. Her hands, thrown forward instinctively, kept her from hitting the water head first, and that may have saved her life. And somehow, despite the fall and the pain and the chaos, she was still breathing. But she wasn't out of danger. She was tangled in the snapped cord, and it was pulling beneath the surface and getting caught on rocks and things, and she was struggling to keep herself out of the water. And Erin had just entered the fight of her life. She was now underwater, tangled in the wreckage of her bungee cord. Her lungs were screaming, and her legs were still bound together. There was roughly 30 meters or 100 feet of cord wrapped around her ankles and dragging her under. The river's current was strong and fast, and the cord pulled her deeper, wrapping around submerged rocks and branches. Every second she fought to keep her head above water, gasping between surges of panic and pain. And this wasn't some lazy swimming hole. This was the Zambezi River, one of the most violent rivers on the continent. There were sudden drop-offs, rapids, underwater ledges, and whirlpools that flip entire rafts like they were bath toys. And then there was the wildlife. Crocodiles and hippos are known to patrol this exact stretch of river, especially along the calmer banks where debris and prey tend to collect. Erin's group had even spotted crocodiles in the water earlier that morning. But somehow she didn't panic. She later said in her mind that she just switched over, that there was no time to be afraid. All she could do was think about getting out. But her vision began to blur from lack of oxygen and she couldn't breathe. The blankets they'd tied around her ankles as padding were now soaked and heavy, weighing her down even more. Still, she fought. Somehow, she managed to untangle herself from the cord, an almost impossible task with her legs bound and the current dragging her. But she became free and began to swim, slowly and painfully. She aimed for the Zimbabwe side of the river, but the current kept pulling her back. She would get within reach of the rocks only to be swept downstream again. It took her nearly 40 minutes to reach the edge of the river. 40 minutes of gasping for air, clawing at the water, drifting, swimming, being dragged back, and trying again. She finally reached shore, exhausted, soaked, and barely able to hold herself up. The first person to reach her was an employee from the Bungee company. He grabbed her harness and hauled her out of the water and gave her his shirt because she was already shivering from shock and exposure. Erin was battered and purple from the impact. She coughed up blood and vomited river water onto the rocks. Worried that she might have internal injuries, she pulled herself into a recovery position, and she didn't know whether the man helping her had any first aid training, so she kind of just did it herself. Somehow, despite the broken cord, the injuries, the current, and the wildlife, and the river itself, Erin Langworthy survived. The jump happened at 5:30 p.m., but Erin didn't reach the hospital in Victoria Falls until nearly 11 p.m. The paramedics actually got lost trying to reach her. And because she had landed on the Zimbabwe side of the river without her passport, she was basically an illegal immigrant stuck in a country that she hadn't officially crossed into because, there were no passport agents at the bottom of that river. She finally arrived at the hospital and was immediately placed on a ventilator. Doctors weren't just concerned about her injuries, but with the amount of contaminated river water she'd inhaled. So she was starting on a heavy dose of antibiotics. X-rays amazingly showed no broken bones, but her lung had partially collapsed. She had soft tissue damage, bruising, and was still coughing up blood, but she was alive and alert. The staff from the Bungee company came to visit her in the hospital, and they were deeply shaken, apologetic, and actually amazed that she survived the fall. Within days, she was flown to South Africa for better care, and 2 weeks later, she returned home to Australia. The Bungee operator, Shearwater Victoria Falls, a tourism company from Zimbabwe, suspended jumps from the bridge for 2 days that followed the incident. Their official statement read, "We voluntarily suspend bungee jumping to allow an audit of the incident. This allows auditors, management, and crew to analyze the cause of the broken cord and review the new system and procedures without distractions." But behind the PR statements, serious questions were being raised. When the footage of Erin's fall hit the internet, it went viral almost instantly. News outlets around the world picked up the story, running with headlines like "Backpacker survives bungee jump from hell" and "Aussie tourist cheats death at Victoria Falls." And the clip itself, it's not just the impact, it's the chilling moment when the cord visibly snaps mid-air. You can see it, you can hear it, and every viewer has the same reaction. That's not supposed to happen. The company insisted it was just a freak accident and that their equipment met international safety standards. But other jumpers who visited that same year told a different story. Some reported that staff were using bath towels as padding around jumpers' ankles. Others said the cords looked worn out and frayed. One traveler recalled asking how often the cords were replaced, and the answer was, "when they break," which is quite unsettling. Erin later would learn that she fell for 4 seconds after the cord snapped, dropping approximately 40 meters or 131 feet through the air before hitting the river. Had Erin been over solid ground, she wouldn't have survived. The only reason she lived was because it had rained the day before, raising the river level and making the impact slightly more forgiving. Authorities in both Zambia and Zimbabwe launched investigations, and the findings were pretty damning. The cord used in her jump had been in service well past its safe lifespan and hadn't been properly tested for elasticity. And because the river had risen lately due to the recent rains, that reduced the safety margin between the platform and the water. The cord was too long for the conditions and no one caught it. The company was ordered to shut down operations temporarily, and new safety protocols were introduced. And these included daily test jumps to check cord behavior, more frequent inspections and replacements, improved staff training in safety and emergency response, and detailed record keeping on cord use, jumper weight, and setup logs. Tourism is a vital part of Zambia's economy. The incident shook public confidence and something had to be done. So in a move that was equal parts PR stunt and a symbolic gesture, Zambia's tourism minister strapped in and jumped off that bridge. He was 50 years old at the time, and he said, "I'm hoping that all those who watched a middle-aged person jumping down the bridge and coming back up smiling will be encouraged to come and visit Zambia." He also offered to jump with Erin again if she ever returned, saying it was his job to be guinea pig and restore the country's faith in tourism safety. But she never did return to jump there. I don't blame her. And he pointed out that up until that incident, there had only been one reported accident in over 150,000 jumps since the sport started there 17 years earlier. You'd think that an experience like that would leave someone shaken for life. But Erin was remarkably calm about the whole thing. In interviews after the incident, she said she never panicked, not during the fall, and not even in the chaos that followed. Her body just went into survival mode. She simply said there's nothing you can do, you just sort of ride it out. She spent several days in the hospital recovering, undergoing scans, x-rays, and being monitored for internal injuries. But there was no lawsuit, no public outrage, just a quiet acceptance that something rare had happened and she somehow lived through it. She said, "I'm a positive person. 50,000 people jump from that spot every year, so it was pure chance that the rope snapped on me. Just wear and tear. Now they've introduced safety measures so it doesn't happen again." A few weeks later, she was walking, flying, and even smiling in interviews. When asked if she'd ever bungee jump again, she didn't say no. She told reporters she wasn't exactly racing to do it again, but she didn't feel scared. Her biggest takeaway wasn't fear, it was gratitude. Gratitude for being alive, for getting help when she needed it, and for the strength that she didn't even know she had. There was one very real consequence, though, and that was the cost. She said that her medical bills totaled over $50,000. Fortunately, she had travel insurance, and without it, she said the accident would have been financially devastating. She said, "It would have ruined my holiday a little bit. If you can afford to travel, you can afford travel insurance." And that postcard that she sent her mom the day before the jump that said, "I'm doing a bungee jump tomorrow, so I'll say goodbye." Only joking. It now lives on her mother's fridge. So it's pretty amazing that Erin not only survived, but stayed calm in that face of real danger and was able to think clearly and walk away without bitterness. That's not just survival, that's resilience. And today, thousands of people still bungee jump off the Victoria Falls Bridge every year. The view is spectacular, the adrenaline is unmatched, and the cord, well, let's hope the inspection log is up to date. Now let me know, would you ever do this bungee jump? I might consider it. No, I don't think I would. Just the fact that there's crocodiles and hippos in that water below might just keep me away from it. Maybe somewhere else. I don't know. I'd have to be there in the moment to see. Now that there's safety protocols there, would you do it? So thanks for watching this. Again, if you love chaotic adventure stories like this, check out the Adventures Gone Wrong merch line. We've got gear for people who like their stories wild, like weird hikes and questionable decisions, dark humor merch. We've got it all, including the bear attack hoodie. It's a bold nod to surviving near misses and barely getting out alive, or, just for those who like to stay on the couch and watch others risk their lives. And before you go to the merch store, hit that like button below if you were sweating halfway through this story, and drop a comment on your wildest travel moment. So until next time, stay curious, stay cautious, and don't forget to check the bungee cord if it looks a little too stretchy.